This is Theater Talk with Oogie. Everyone gets asked the same questions, but everybody's story is different.
So, introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, the tongue was in quotes and ich so like what's antique that Sulina Ojit dan the Kashafat Jatagona Junay cooking chick could take a jagging lanes and quotes and chicken chick cook without it. It's Cuenta Doyan Foundation I go venture go to Butlins Gwich'in University School outside a Masters of Egypt I Gwich'in Bachelor's Theatre Film Google it My name is Allan Hayton, my Athabascan name is Gwich'in. I grew up in Arctic Village and my grandmother raised me, and at that time there was a lot of people that spoke the language, and it's from them that I learned. And I went away to college, got my bachelor's in theater and film from the University of Kansas, and prior to that an associate's at Haskell. And then a few years ago I got my master's in applied linguistics. So I've been working for Doyan Foundation and working with language revitalization. But prior to that I did quite a bit of theater.
What is your focus in theater?
I was primarily an actor, and mostly stage, some film, but primarily stage acting. And I did a little bit of directing, a little bit of writing, but mostly I was an actor.
Why couldn't you resist theater?
Gosh. I first got into theater in college at Haskell, and it was in my freshman year, spring semester, and I took Pat Melody's public speaking class, and she just happened to be looking for an actor to be in The Tempest, and this was in 1987, and once she heard me speak in her class, she said, okay, and she put me on stage. It wasn't that I was naturally drawn to it, or, like, I was pretty shy, introverted, and grew up from a small village, and didn't really feel comfortable being in front of a lot of people. But I did that first show, The Tempest. I played Ferdinand, and it was an all-native cast. It was the Thunderbird Theater at Haskell. Prospero was Menominee from Wisconsin. Miranda, she was Pueblo. I forget which Pueblo she was, either Taos or in that area, Pewaukee or something. Kitty Montoya, and Marie Smart, she's Paiute. She played Ariel. Mark Chibity played Caliban, and he's Comanche. It was an intertribal production. We all wore our own style of tribal regalia or style of dress. So that was my first entree into theater. After that I did a Jules Pfeiffer play. What was the name of that? I'm forgetting. It was a bunch of shorts. Jules Pfeiffer. We did Angels Fall, and a number of other plays in that Hiawatha building. And it was my freshman, sophomore years at Haskell, and then I finished my associates there in 1988, we also did Songs of Life as well. But then I transferred up the hill to the University of Kansas. Originally, I thought I was going to be a pre-med student and pursue that field until I tried to do organic chemistry. And all the coursework for that was pretty intense. And I also just started to enjoy being in theater and found a family and started to grow in ways that I didn't realize I could, and became more comfortable on stage. And I enjoyed kind of inhabiting different characters and experiencing a different point of view and different ways of thinking. And theater shares a lot of different issues, brings those out for audience members. So I just started to really enjoy the experience of theater. It was very different going from Haskell to University of Kansas. It was a larger department. There was formal auditions and competition. I ended up being cast quite often as a shaman or a priest or some mystic. So I played Friar Lawrence and this other character in this play called Duck Hunting, Vampilov. He was an Indigenous Russian playwright, and that was a beautiful play we did. So I graduated from the University of Kansas in 1992 and started working out in the professional world as an actor, and was lucky to be able to tour and travel quite a bit, which was quite an adventure.
What basic tools must you have to do what you do?
Basic tools. Well, theater training, they take you through improv and movement and voice and scene study, and it's a lot of work to just be in the moment. And that was the one thing I recall the most, I guess, is being true in the moment and not anticipating or looking back, but just being in that exact moment you're on stage. So I think that is what I've taken the most out of, is being genuine and react as if, what would you do in that situation? I guess that's some tools that I picked up along the way.
As an actor, how would you say that you usually land a gig?
Lately, it's not so much I've been auditioning, and maybe I ought to do more of that, but just knowing people, and they have a project, and they say, "Hey, Allan, what do you think of this?" And sometimes it works, sometimes it fits in my schedule and appeals. I'm trying to think back to 2012 when Tom Robino and Rebecca George approached me and said, "We're thinking about doing Lear, and we'd like to do it Gwich'in." And I thought, I hadn't thought of that play. I was ruminating over adapting a Shakespeare play to Gwich'in language, and I thought of comedy, because Gwich'in people have a lot of humor. I hadn't thought at all of the tragedies, and then when they mentioned Lear, I thought, that actually makes a lot of sense. This patriarch who, the world is changing around him, and there's some loss, a lot of loss, and it just reminded me of some of the elders I knew growing up, and also from other tribes, Chief Peter John or Walter Northway, Reverend David Salmon. all these elders that almost come from a different time. They were born on the land and hunting, and the world changed around them. So it reminded me a lot of the story in Lear, and that was quite an experience at translating and adapting. And it was at the same time I was trying to finish my master's, which wasn't probably the brightest idea to do that level of translation and acting, and at the same time you're trying to finish your thesis. But it all happened, and thankfully I finished each of them successfully.
What is your process once you get started working on a production?
Well, I would research and try to understand what is the main story that is happening within the play, and who is my role within the play, within the story that's happening, and listening. Other characters within the play will make statements or talk about your character, and that's a big clue for an actor listening to what other characters describe you as, or how they react and interact with your character informs your own choices. And understanding the world of the play that it's taking place. Some productions have very specific time periods or cultural settings or interpretations. So I think that part is all integral research and understanding, and helps prepare you for making choices as an actor. And it can't be all intellectual and cerebral. You have to be more in your body as an actor, but it helps to do that type of research to understand. And then listening and being open to energy. Your fellow actors give you energy and you return it, and it's that back and forth. I think that audiences are able to, because it's not just your words, but it's your body language, and you're saying a lot physically as your communication with your other characters and actors on stage. So audiences pick up on a lot of that. They don't just listen to what you say, but they watch how you're being, connect with you that way.
What are you working on currently or in the near future, and in what capacity?
Lately we've been working, it's a company called Breadcrumbs Theater, and it's a form of theater, I guess you would call it applied theater. It's comes out of the school, I guess, of theater of the oppressed, and playback is a form that kind of brings together ceremony and ritual and storytelling, and there's no fourth wall. You're directly addressing the audience a lot of times, or you see them, they see you, you're not pretending that they're not there. And the form involves musicians, actors, and a conductor. And the conductor will elicit stories from an audience, and the company will play back that story. It can be really powerful. I've been on both sides of it, where you're playing back the story that you just heard, or I've told a story and saw it acted, and that could be, it's a very different form of theater, and I was curious about it, and it involves a lot of improv, which was never my great forte, I like to have a script and rehearsed, be rehearsed, and but this is there's no script. You're physically and vocally and every other way replaying the story that you just heard. So there's no rules and no script safety net to rely on, but it is a safe environment that we try to create, and we do a lot of work with incarcerated youth or those in treatment, and I think it's helpful for them to be able to have a voice, and as a company member you're kind of the clay and they're shaping what you're doing. So it's been a really rewarding type of theater to be involved with, and it also doesn't require 6 weeks of rehearsal, and then you're not on a production schedule where you're so many shows a week. You just show up, and if you have all the elements together, you can do it right there. So it fits also within my own schedule, and we have a couple of gigs, I guess, coming up, and I've been enjoying it. It's been a learning process.
What excites you about what you do?
I think, once again, like you learn in your theater training, being in the moment, and at this moment in my life, to continue being able to discover and learn. Theater provides that opportunity and creates community and friendships. A lot of people can become very isolated as they get older, and thankfully theater kind of provides a family, a community. When you collaborate and work together, you develop those friendships, and I think I really appreciate that.
What is your least favorite thing about what you do?
I think it's becoming more challenging. Physically, you're different as you get older, and maybe not move as well. But you adapt, and memorizing lines can be a little more challenging than it used to be. And but I think there's also more depth than when I was young, and have a lot more experiences in life, good and bad, to draw from, and to add color to what I'm doing on stage. So I suppose looking back, I might have done things differently, but you can't really have regrets in life. You just have to keep moving forward and take on the next challenge and try to learn and make improvements and humble yourself, and just be open to what the world is presenting to you. It's quite an amazing experience we have in life, and a gift, and I just appreciate that more and more.
What's a funny or weird thing that happened during a show?
Oh, there were quite a few. Those happy accidents. One in particular I could think of was this play we did called Duck Hunting, and the playwright was Vampilov. He was a Indigenous Russian playwright, and this was at the University of Kansas, and I think it was one of my first productions. Maybe it was in my senior year, but I think it was 1989, so yeah, it was my second year at the university there, and I was working with a whole new company. But the play itself was kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, existential sort of meditation in a way, but it was set in office, and there was a writer, and the writer was kind of dying inside because the work was essentially propaganda. You know, he was ordered and expected to stay within a certain script, and you can't really veer far from that. And it was just soul destroying for him. And my character was a waiter that he would see at a restaurant, and at the same time, that character, Dima, he was almost a Mephistophelian figure in the play. I don't know why the character was able to open up to that waiter, but the waiter seemed to have this almost control of him in a way, even though it was a character that wasn't on stage all the time, but throughout there were references. And as I recall, we did this acting exercise by Michael Chekhov, and where you sum up your character in a gesture, and the character of Dima is a waiter, so he would be holding out his hand for a tip, or your soul. But the scene that was very funny was, it was a mixture of comedy, tragedy, but pretty dark. So the character, the lead, was very suicidal and was trying to figure out how to shoot himself with a rifle, and he couldn't reach the trigger, and he was even trying with his toe. And at that moment his friends in the play enter and see this happening, and it becomes this comical dance of struggle with the gun. It was almost choreographed, going left and then right, and then this one evening the chair that the character was sitting on caught in his clothing, so the chair joined this whole choreographed movement. And it was just things that happen on stage that, I don't know, it's live theater, so it just happens, and you have to go with it, and be thankful for those kind of moments, because it's different when it's veers from whatever was rehearsed. And the main character would often talk to my character on the phone, and once we were visiting Dylan's, the store, the grocery store, and as we were entering, the phone rang, and we all stopped and looked, wondering who could be calling. And there was another funny moment off stage during that time we were doing that production.
What advice do you have for someone going into your profession?
I would say, when I think about my experiences, the one thing I could have done without or less of is fear. Fear can hold you back and limit the experience that you're going to have on stage and in life. And oftentimes fear it's natural, but it's just a reaction. It's not the reality of the situation. In reality, you're on stage, you're in a theater, it's a safe environment, the audience isn't going to attack you, or your fellow actors are there to support you. So fear really doesn't have maybe the same use as if you're out in the woods and you're being attacked or chased by a bear or something real. But if you push past that and really dive in and let go of that fear and doubt and just fully immerse yourself, and you'll be surprised where it takes you, and the opportunities that open, the doors that open, if you just put away that fear and be fully present and open to your fellow actors and audience members.
What would you like to say to the world?
I think it's really changed since I was younger, and I'm a little fearful sometimes. I know I just talked about fear, but it seems like the reality of the world today is changing, and there seems to be a lot of uncertainty of life being sustained, and if we're destroying the environment that we depend on, animals dying off, oceans, it's very scary. And I wish that we would all take it a little more serious and take action that will make a difference for future generations. And we have to think beyond just our present needs and look long term. When we buy something, we pay a certain amount, but there's a lot more cost to it if it's just tossed in the garbage and used only once. We aren't paying that cost right in the moment, but down the road there's a cost to it. And I just feel like I wish we would wake up to that reality, that we can't just pretend it's a hoax. That there's many people that preceded us, and we hope that there'll be many more in the future. And but we do have to take certain steps to ensure that there is a future for the world.